2, 1, and we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Friday podcast with VPD. We've got Bruno Schwalbach in the house. Yeah, a personal idol of mine, a great karateka, a great guy all around. I wish I spoke to him more as a cadet. I wish I had more time to play with him, but destiny has decreed that we interact a lot in the future. How are you doing, brother?
All good, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I must say it's always been a thought of mine that I've had the perfect voice for writing and not so much podcast, but
yeah,
I'm happy to give this new medium a shot. Thanks for that very generous introduction. I guess I was just at the sort of level of, entering the senior team when you were sort of wide-eyed and having a look at the age divisions above you, and I happened to be sort of the right place at the right time, and so that's where...
Yeah, that's actually crazy, man, because now, like, fast forward a few years, and I've actually been in the senior team for a couple of years, but I always, like, picture you as, like, oh, man, he was up there, you know what I'm saying? But I've actually been there.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, there was a couple of performances that stood out for me, like Nationals in 2010 in Soweto. That was a crazy Nationals. I remember that the senior division was split across like 4 mats, and maybe you had 6 rounds, something like that.
Yeah, it would have been 6, and if I remember correctly, the stakes were quite high in that one. I think
it was super dense, that division.
Yeah. And super hot, I remember as well. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was sort of October, November sort of time of the year.
Yeah.
Stadium
sounds right.
Really, really warm, and you've got 6 katas to do, and then straight onto the mat for kumite, which was.
Yeah. I didn't even watch kumite back in those days, to be honest.
Such was your focus.
Such was my focus. Yeah, let's be nice about it.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, that division had James Chen.
Yeah.
James Chen is, I don't know, do you know where he's gone? Was he a JKA guy?
Yeah, so James and I grew up together. He was sort of in our dojo in Black in Bloemfontein at Koffsie's.
Really?
Yeah, so we were, he was an age above myself, so we only really started competing with one another on the competition mat once you got to the cadet level, where they started mixing ages and so forth. But very definitely sort of the pillar in the dojo that you strive to achieve, because James had actually achieved global success really early on. I mean, he would. If I'm not mistaken, I think he became WKC world champion at quite a young age. But I mean, an extraordinary
kata. That was a thing back then, yeah.
And without him, I can easily say that I would be nowhere near the type of athlete that I was.
Interesting.
Because he was just this shining example very near you. And you must remember, when I was sort of 8, 9, 10, 11, there was no YouTube, there was no exposure to the outside world.
Of course.
You
needed it to be local.
You needed it to be, and you had this global extraordinary talent right in the dojo. So he remained very much a pillar to follow within the local Bloem community, and that just evolved from there. So I remember very clearly never having beaten him ever until Soweto, I think. Either way, whatever.
You had him in the semi-final, if I remember correctly.
Well, whatever the case was, I got him once, he got me many, many, many more times. So
I understand. I can totally relate to that, man.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that, having stimulus nice and near. Yeah.
So in my mind, I mean, this, I think, applies in sport, it applies in life also. You've got nature, you've got nurture, but there's a little bit of adversity that's needed to give you that source of energy when you need it most. So it's really easy to do well in the good times. It's in the bad times, where's your source of energy coming from to carry on?
True.
And having a good example very close to you, in this case, I mean, it's a small example with sport, but in broader life, I think very applicable. When times are tough, where are you getting your energy from? And having a good purpose, and having a little bit of adversity. I'm not now suggesting that if you have had no adversity, it's not gonna you won't be able to succeed in the same fashion, but it certainly helps if you're able to formulate some kind of adversity, always losing against the same guy or something much worse. I mean, that's a small example, as being the little fire in your belly to keep you going when the when you're on the floor, but I think you can relate to that as well, eh? What was your experience? Did you also have somebody who was just always that much better than you?
Yeah, man. Silvio Biagioni.
Okay.
We were very good friends from the time when I started competing, and he was my sensei's son as well. So it made things difficult. It made things very difficult because he was always in the dojo. He had a dojo at his house, and I was thinking like, okay, how do I upgrade my facilities and stuff so that I can be able to chip him, But I think it was always healthy competition, and same as you, I credit Silvio to making me fight through that initial stage. I mean, the amount of times we had like just lost 3-2, and it's just like, man, and you just hate that feeling so much that you go back and you say, okay, I'm going to go to next level, Dragon Ball Z style, just train, and then we go to the next level.
But the thing is, you try to find little things that come out of those head-to-heads. So when I started out, and I mean, goodness, I haven't spoken to James in many years, but I should, and I should just let him know what he's actually meant to me in my formation period, because he meant a lot. But you sort of start out and it's 5 flags to 0, or in the JKA realm within the points environment, it's you're nowhere near. I mean, he's just a massive step above. And then it gets a little bit closer, and then it gets a little bit closer, and gets a little bit closer. And to me, it's sort of using that as an example. Where do you derive your joy? Is it the result? Is it these 3 senseis happen to believe that my kata is better than his kata on this particular day? Is that where you derive your self-worth? Is that where you derive your joy from?
Such a good question,
or
Bruno.
is it
such a good question, man?
So in my mental model, it is not all of life is luck, but there's a tremendous amount of luck involved in most things. And all we can do is prepare ourselves in the best way we know how, to get outside help, to build the infrastructure, as you spoke about, to improve, leave it all on the mat, or in life, in business, in studying, write the exam, do the deal in the best way you know how. And there are a million different externalities which will have their effect on the outcome. All you can do is buy that ticket and see where the road leads. So in my mind, and this has been a massive personal journey, it's transition from in my early days with the competing, deriving joy about gold, and then feeling terrible when a silver or a bronze comes about. By the way, I happen to believe that bronze is better than silver, but that's a different...
I agree with that.
But moving from the result being your source of pleasure, your source of growth, your source of worth, to being happy despite the result, being in a place where you could equally be happy losing in the first round, but doing the best kata you've ever done, doing the best 3-minute round kumite you've ever done, as being unhappy winning the gold medal, but knowing, you yourself knowing, and no one else will know, but you yourself will know that you didn't do your best. You didn't leave it all out there.
It's so tough to use that as your marker, man. I think especially in kata, because in kumite you have a little bit more feedback as an athlete. You kind of know the energy exchange. You know if you're beating your opponent. But with kata, it's you alone. So it's like, look, I felt this way. But what I looked like could have been a completely different story in actuality.
So let's get deeper in there. Are you saying that you do the kata on the floor?
Yeah.
You and you alone know how it felt to do that kata on the floor.
Yeah.
You walk away, you review video, and are you saying that your opinion of your performance might change based on the visuals?
100%.
But
100%.
should they?
Yes. Sure.
I'm not so
because,
sure.
Because, look, I think, man, personally, when you're performing the kata in your mind, I know that I focus on specific points. I've performed best when I focus on 1 or 2 points in the performance. Sometimes even none. Okay. So then my marker, feeling-wise, is on 1 or 2 aspects of the kata. But when I look at it from an outside point of view, I can process a whole lot more factors.
But is that processing of factors not marred by a little bit of bias? So in other words, you come off the floor, you get an adverse decision.
Yes.
That's going to color the way in which you view your kata afterwards.
Oh, sure. 100%.
So I'm suggesting don't let that happen.
Mm.
Enjoy the moment, be present, feel the kata, because I mean, somebody at your level, you're not thinking when you're doing kata. You're not thinking, okay, I know the next move is a very important marker. I know my ankle has battled with this particular spin in the past. You're not there. Your mind is focused on presence, delivery, feeling rather than thinking.
100%.
I mean, this is at least my experience.
Yes, yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
So what about if I challenge you to sort of leave it at that?
Yeah.
What will be will be. The results are not in your hands or in your control, and you can try to view the kata thereafter in sort of a black and white manner. Try to be objective about it, not emotional.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting that analysis is always going to be biased by how you were judged.
Yeah. Look, I think
And it's normal. It's natural, right? I mean, if you've had a disappointing experience, you're going to bring that disappointment with a little bit of. If you've had an excellent experience, you're going to, and to me, this is a challenge of life: is how, when I am trying to improve, how when there is a scenario that has happened, how do I remove the emotional aspect away?
Yes.
And I'm not suggesting that emotion is a bad thing, but certainly when it comes to decision making, it is a terrible thing.
Of course.
How do you extract that emotion?
You have to look at the objective facts first as a framework.
Which is hard.
It is super hard. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with kata, because kata is so opinion based. And when I look at kata, even if it's not mine, it has a visceral effect on me. Like sometimes I can watch a kata and I'll be like, ugh, no.
Yeah.
God, no.
Yeah.
It's so weird that a set of movements can create this effect, like this emotional effect in you. Like, oh, wow, that's terrible. Or, wow, that's amazing.
And I mean, we go back to the other night when we practiced Unsu together virtually with Sensei Jody.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but it became... the feeling of doing Unsu, even through the lens of Sensei Jody recording himself a couple kilometers away, you and then somebody in Germany, I mean, people all over the world getting together through this medium of kata.
You're advertising great for my brand. Thank you, Bruno.
Well, look, I pride myself in being really objective, and I'd say if it wasn't good, but in that particular, set of minutes where we were just going through just sequences of the kata, there's something about it that look, I've always felt that kumite, there is nothing that brings you more to the present like kumite. You might have issues on the outside world, you might have challenges facing you might have a difficult decision to make, but when you are on the mat and it's you against somebody else,
it's like, wake up now, or you're gonna get hit. You can't be thinking about something else.
The cost
dude.
of distraction is massive.
Yes, yeah.
So you are present.
That's such a good way of putting it, man. The cost of distraction is massive.
So
that's so interesting.
Well, you only have to be hit a few times before you come to that conclusion.
It's true, but I think it's like that with all of life. It's just that the feedback is so much more definitive in kumite.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting hit. If
So
you
you're
get
saying-
distracted from a certain task,
Yeah.
with anything in life, if you're not focusing on your studies or your job or whatever for a certain amount of time, you're going to get hit, but it's later.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that might happen later on. It's not the moment I turn my face, boom, okay, there's immediate pain, like this primal kind of effect to it,
So here's a question for you. Is life more like kata or more like kumite in that sense?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to evade this question. And I'm going to say that essentially, kata and kumite are the same thing. Yeah. I would say that this is not a very popular view to be held. I think a lot of people say it, but they don't really believe it, or they don't really understand what it means when you say that phrase.
Walk me through it.
So the thing is, kumite is feedback with another partner, right? Which means that you have to be. For me, the key difference between the key difference between kata and kumite is that you have to be empathetic in kumite, because I cannot hit when I feel like it. I have to see what's happening in my opponent's eyes, control him, put him in a space where I can execute what I have practiced. Kata style. Right? Where kata is completely on my own. Am I able to execute X? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the thing is, the feeling of creation is very interesting in kata because you can make it your own. You know what I'm saying? You can create your own feeling to it. You can create your own timing to it. You can put your own meaning to given techniques. With kumite, there's a given meaning and a given feedback that needs to happen to a specific situation. You know, it's like marketplace. Identify the need in the market and then hit it. This is the same thing in kumite, where in kata I'm experimenting. I'm writing the textbook,
which is interesting in that it's a choreographed set of moves which has been established decades and decades and decades ago,
man.
And hundreds of thousands of people have done those set of moves before you.
Yes.
And yet you can somehow bring some of your personality to it within the confines of the rules.
Somehow. Like the person, I don't know the history of Unsu very well. I know it means cloud hands, but I don't know who invented the kata. I don't know what they were thinking.
But you know what they were feeling.
Maybe.
I certainly think I
But the thing is, if I have to compare, you know, Japanese style Unsu with Michael Milon, it's like they're not speaking the same language. They're saying the same things, but they're not speaking the same language, and that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fascinating. And that I think is why you can look at a kata and you can say, I agree with that rhetoric or not. Just the same way that when somebody speaks or somebody says something, when they're listening to a podcast or a politician speak or something like that, it's like, oh, I resonate.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly the same thing with kata, but it's more mysterious.
Yeah. So the way I would say my relationship with kata has evolved, I mean, just a brief background on my story. I stopped karate at the age of 21. So I had done...
2011, right?
Yeah, 2011. Just a little bit of a personal tragedy got involved there. And a few years of hiatus, let's call it, about 7 years of hiatus, and then got back towards the beginning of last year. And since then, a couple competitions, but really the big difference, and I think it's just a question of maturity, is once again, competition-orientated karate is how I would define my sort of cadet, junior, entering into the senior realm years.
Okay.
And joy is derived from winning. You are the guy who has always won, and so there is an expectation that you will continue to win.
Are you able to give the referees what they want to see?
And the rhetoric was, you do not give them the chance to be wrong. This is what was drilled into you. You have to be so good that they've got no choice.
Man, I can hear Sensei Ian in that rhetoric, man. I can immediately identify it.
And it worked like a charm because, I mean, the results spoke for themselves in those times. I mean, I don't pretend to have nearly the CV as many people who have stood in this, sat in this chair. But for the given years that I was sort of involved in that frame, that kind of thinking worked.
No, man, your CV is pretty impressive.
I beg to differ, but okay. We go to today, and I mean, life has matured tremendously. Karate has gone from this is something I do to this is a hobby I have, and the joy no longer lies in the competition, the thrill of the chase, doing what, I mean, don't get me wrong, if I'm going to get on the floor, I'm going to do what it takes to do my best. But really the joy comes from, goodness, that was the best I could do. And if the best I could do today was fourth place, so be it. I'll walk away and congratulate the winner because he's I feel like he's better than me. And even if he's not, the joy comes from inside, where you say, I've done all I could. The externalities were X, Y, and Z. That is the way that it happened to be. But you walk away fulfilled because you did all that you could do. And that's the interesting difference. So you see it a little bit differently. You're saying that kata, you have full control over the execution, but the result is out of your hands.
100%.
Whereas kumite is far more, the sort of point scoring is a little bit more out of your hands because you now have this person who can also act and think independently, but
yes,
but the results are more objective because
the results are more objective. And even if you lose the match, both of the opponents on the floor understand what was happening there. You see it when people go up to their opponents and they say, the referee's decision didn't quite go the right way there, man, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Well, then, let's then say that you do both, and then on average, it's completely objective. How's that?
Yeah, I suppose it's somewhere like that. You know, I mean, life is in a big way understanding what you can control and what you can't.
Yeah.
And I think there are factors in any endeavor where you cannot control it. Yeah, it's just... I think I've spoken with a few people about this, a couple of high-level people, and generally people agree that kata is more out of your control than in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you were speaking about exploration of your body, of the way that you execute kata, etc., etc. And I think to myself, I used to think about this when I was younger, when I was a cadet. I used to aspire to Mario Higayona style karate. Do you know Sensei Mario? Sensei Mario is he's the chief of IOGKF in Okinawa, right? He's the 10th Dan. He's a great practitioner, super hard style. But if you watch his karate and you try to apply it on competition level, it cannot win because of what the referees are looking for. Now, that might be because the referees aren't looking for the right thing, because I believe that Sensei Morio knows more than the referees. I believe that. But it makes you ask yourself, okay, so where is the line that I'm drawing here? And if you compete for a very long time, like a lot of the guys on the WKF circuit are beyond the age of 30. I believe that the peak for kata as a competitor is beyond the age of 30. So something very interesting that Kiyuna said in a recent interview on the JKF YouTube channel was, I hope to explore what Sakumoto Sensei is teaching me on a WKF level. And I thought, his motivation is not to win. And that is fascinating for a guy who's a 3-time world champ.
Yeah. So it doesn't gel that you have this ultra competitive, sort of a guy who strives to win all the time and yet says that the goal is not to win, but the goal is the execution. And this is beautiful. I think this is an incredibly difficult conclusion that everybody needs to get to at some point.
I think so too. Because I think everybody's lost matches that they don't deserve to.
Yeah.
I think that always happens.
And you know what, Mike? That's life.
It is life. It is life, 100%.
And this is, I mean, I have some theories about how sort of karate imitates life. And to me, there is no greater education than adversity. Not only what happens and the pain of that, but your response to what happens, because everybody has a choice.
A lot of time, action is created through necessity. You know, it's very difficult to say, I don't need to do that, but I do it. It's very difficult. But if you are placed under pressure and you say, listen, do or die, gun to your head, you have to move. That is most of the times where progress is made.
Without a doubt. And you learn that from being a kid. So you are 8 or 9 years old and you feel the pain of defeat.
Yes.
And you immediately learn to be a gracious loser.
Yeah.
You feel the joy of victory and you immediately learn to be a gracious winner because you won't be in that position all the time.
Yes.
And there's a certain way that you wish other people acted towards you, and so you try to act that way. It has been a fabulous education to have done karate from such a young age. And I don't know if maybe it was different in your time, but it wasn't cool to do karate as a 5, 6, 7-year-old back in the day. There was no,
it wasn't cool in my
and
day
I credit MMA and the rise of the UFC massively with karate becoming cool.
Definitely.
Sort of in the past few years, but you were definitely teased as a youngster, karate kid and that kind of stuff, and yet they don't understand.
No, they don't.
Because you in a very direct way get feedback about your progress, because it is an individual sport. Even though you're surrounded by people, it's you on the mat versus somebody else. Even
100%.
in kata kumite, you get that feedback. You experience the pain of loss, you experience the joy of victory.
Yes.
And the negative byproduct of that is you tend to start associating your self-worth with those results.
Yes.
Which you're not going to learn on by yourself quickly. You need some sort of external parent, guardian, to guide you through that process.
You have to. you have to, and somebody to guide you to what is the correct way to deal with the things that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because for somebody who aspires to do karate properly, it is a painful route.
But in the best possible way.
In the best possible way.
Yeah.
Like you said, the pain allows you to grow, but you have to know how to deal with what's going to hit you.
Yeah.
You know?
Without a doubt. And I mean, I don't read a lot of poetry, but I particularly like that poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling.
My favorite as well. Yeah.
And so I think in the third stanza he talks about treating victory and defeat as the imposters that they are.
Yes.
And I think that is absolutely true, because this is not a movie. There is no ending. There is just continuation.
100%.
And so coming to a competition, winning that competition, well, that same competition is going to be around next year. I mean, COVID notwithstanding.
Yes. Yeah.
And you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again.
Yeah.
So if your goal in life is win, this is an impossible goal, because you cannot win forever and ever.
Of course.
So what is the right goal to have? And that's a question that every athlete, every person needs to work out for themselves. And it's just been my journey that goal has gone from outward focused, look at me, I'm so successful, to inward focus. Wow, that was a fantastic training session.
Yes, sure.
Okay, and I happen to put my skills on the mat in a competition to see my own progress. And this has been the journey.
100%. If I look at my experience in the 2014 UFAC in Senegal, if a statistician had to look at the numbers, values associated to that competition, nobody would have put me as the winner. There's no chance. Sometimes you're just meant to win. You know, I was on the same side of the draw as Egypt. Egypt had come.
I know how that feels.
Dude. You know, I was 18 years old. I'd never been in the national team before for a senior event. And he had just come off winning the University World Championship. By the way, the only Egyptian who's ever done so till today. So 2 weeks before he won that title, I tore my hamstring in the quarterfinal just before I met him.
Goodness.
So it's like everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. And I ended up coming on top.
Unbelievable.
Till today, like, I have no idea how.
Unbelievable.
You know? Till today, I have no idea. But sometimes it's just like, this is your day, dude.
So explore that.
Yeah.
You're on the mat. You face this insurmountable challenge.
Yes.
How is it that you psych yourself up? Like, talk to me through the exact steps that you take to get yourself in a position where you feel like you can perform the best on the day, in the moment, gi on.
Sensei Jody was my coach on the
that
day.
Always helps.
Dude, unbelievable. Yeah, he helped so much. So the first thing was, there was not a lot that I knew. So I didn't worry about things because I didn't know them. In the quarterfinal, I faced Senegal, and I didn't regard anybody as a problem but Egypt. But Senegal was actually a big deal. He'd won multiple medals on African level, and we were in Senegal. So to win that match was crazy. And that's exactly the round that I tore my hamstring. It was on the first Maigiri in Annan. Boom. So then you've got like 75% of the kata left. And somehow I managed to get through it. And then I just remember, you know...
Did you know in the moment that something was wrong?
I couldn't pull the foot back after the Maigiri, so I just left it out there. But I managed to modify the step, which is cool. And then I came off and the flags went up and I didn't even have a chance to celebrate. Sensei Jody was celebrating. And I just went, my handscreen's screwed, you know. It's messed up, man. And like his facial expression changed. He took a look at it. We had some time. I was asking a few questions about the next round, but I remember immediately switching to the next task mentally. No, not worried. It's like, okay, what kata am I going to do? Whatever. And I immediately started processing. I stopped thinking about the hamstring.
Oh, that's adversity, man.
That's the first. Yeah, exactly. It's that survival instinct. You can't think about the things that are pushing you down right now. And then Sensei Jody said something very interesting. He said, you have to believe that this kata is enough. Because like in your brain, you're like, I'm 18. I struggled to win my provincial championship this year. I didn't actually get into the provincial team that year.
Wow.
I got through on a wild card.
Wow.
So you're thinking like, do I have enough?
Yeah.
You know, now my hamstring's torn and I didn't even get through to the Gauteng team with a perfect hamstring. What the hell's going to happen here? And this guy just won University World Championships. So you can think all of these things. But Sensei Jody said, you have to believe that this kata is enough. And that was such an important input to have, you know?
To focus solely on yourself,
Exactly.
leave the outside externalities.
Yeah.
You focus on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, I've got one or two interesting stories around those sorts of, and I'll use two kumite matches that I particularly remember of just sort of getting psyched up for the moment and doing what you otherwise thought you wouldn't have done. So the first was team event. I think I might have been 20 years old or 21, one of the two. We were in Zimbabwe.
That was 2010.
Oh, you'll remember better than what I was.
Zone 6.
Yeah, Zone 6.
I wasn't competing at that time, but
yeah. So we were facing Angola at the time.
Okay.
And I was the under 67 representative, but I think in Zone 6 there were many representatives, not just one. Any event, I happened to be drafted into the team kumite setup, and I remember I fought third, I believe, and I was faced up against the over 84.
It's the most pressure.
Yeah,
crazy.
And I line up against the over 84. Now I'm not a tall guy. I'm 169 or something along those lines, and I was on the south side of under 67. I could have easily gone under 60. So not the biggest guy in the world, but I don't know what came over me, but I just thought, okay, well, this is now not a case of winning or losing. This is now a case of surviving. You're in Zimbabwe. You in the Zone 6 final. The crowd is going a little bit berserk. I think we were either down by 1 or 2, but it was an important match. I needed to win it. It comforted me that you had Sensei Morgan coming after, so if I stuffed up, at least he's there. To sort of, he was so brilliant, and he is brilliant. But so I got onto the floor, and I just thought, okay, well, my mind needs to help me here, and I need to play some kind of mind game on this guy to put him a little bit out of kilter, because I'm just staring at this guy twice my size, and he was on the north side of over 84. So very definitely, if there was a division above that, he probably would have been the representative. And what I did is, there was sort of the line where you have to walk to, and he walked to his line, and I purposefully stepped 2 or 3 feet over my line, and I just looked at him, and I just never broke my gaze. Now, I'm just imagining the scenario of this little chihuahua staring down this absolute pit bull.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I thought that is what I needed to get psyched up to show this guy that I'm not going to back down. And the referee said, take a step back, and I took like half a step back, and I'm still ahead of my line, and I look at this guy, and I'm not letting go. And I convinced myself in that moment that I've won the first exchange.
Yes, yeah.
And it's probably ridiculous, because that guy's probably laughing at me in his mind, but in my mind, in the moment, I feel like I've won the first exchange, so why can't I go on to win?
That's crazy, man. I completely understand that, yeah.
And it might have been silly, but it's what I needed in the moment. And I happened to have gone on to win that fight by maybe 1 point. I happen to think the guy was extra nice to me. I don't know what it was about that particular moment, but
that's super humble, Bruno.
So got through that one. The other example, and this is a great Sensei Ian story, and this is probably my favorite Sensei Ian story. I think it was 2010 or 2011. There was the Commonwealth Games in Johannesburg.
Okay. 10.
Yeah. So we had just come back from Sensei Alagas and the very first camp that we attended.
Sensei
Said, Sensei Barton, Sensei Alagas, and also I think the actual attraction there was Agayev actually giving that camp, and that's actually the reason that we joined.
So Agayev came to South Africa?
No,
we
went to Turkey.
You went to Turkey.
Yeah,
okay.
so we went to Turkey to do that, and then compete in the Istanbul Open.
Oh yes,
and we didn't really know who Sensei Alagas was. I knew who Sensei Barton was, because I'd seen the fights with Biamonti. Biamonti being my favorite athlete of all time. I've watched all of his fights, and so I'd seen the finals quite a few times. But it just happened that Sensei Heldon was also giving that camp, and it was an unbelievable experience to learn from him, and that is where the genesis of bringing him to South Africa sort of started from.
2010.
No,
Okay.
yeah, so 2009, 2010, one of those events. So we came back, and so this is now a week of hard training with Sensei, Agayev and Alaga. So feeling really on top of my game at this point. So we do kata and did well there. And then we went into the individual kumite. I was in the under 67 division. And I don't remember who the fight was against. It could have been against the DRC or someone. But I think it was the semi-final, and this guy was just a specialist in Chudan Mawashi. And what I was doing well on the day was just breaking the line 45 degrees and just countering with a Gyakuzuki, either Joran or Chudan. But just literally that was the game plan. He's going to come with it because that's his sort of star technique. You wait for it, you break the line, and you counter. That was the MO from Sensei Ian. And a long fight, tough fight, but on one of the particular Chudan Mawashis, I just felt, okay, that one hurt. And my left arm, which blocked it, started to feel a little bit jelly-like.
Yeah.
At that point, I'd never broken anything, so I had no idea what to, feel when something was broken. But so the arm started to feel like jelly, but the adrenaline is high. You're in the semi-finals. Stadium is warm. You're in the moment. You're in the zone. You're more animal than you are person.
Of course.
You're not thinking. You're feeling.
Yes.
You're in the zone. And so, since Ian has a conversation with a doctor who came and examined me, and I don't know what they said. Since Ian took him to the side, and they have that conversation. Since Ian looks at me and he says, "You're fine. Let's go." Longest 30 seconds of my life, but get through it somehow, some way, and I'm in the final now of the Commonwealth, and my arm is not feeling right. It's jelly, So a lot of the techniques that I was really liking on the day, I was liking the front hand kizami.
Yeah.
I was liking
front hand pressure.
I don't know if you feel it, but
you lose all of it.
Yeah, just some days you feel good with something, and my left hand was particularly hot that day.
Yeah.
Get into the finals, and it's a guy from Pakistan. I had no idea who this guy was, but I learned after that he was an incredibly accomplished WKF fighter. Many quarterfinals.
He still
achieved.
fights, right?
Oh,
He
goodness.
fights in under 75.
Yeah.
now.
So,
I know who it is. I don't know his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so before then, I mean, I got the opportunity to spar with Sensei Agayev for 20 minutes or 25 minutes back in Turkey. And this was purely because, I mean, again, it's in those days, there weren't too many training videos on YouTube. And so when between classes, he would get up and train. A lot of us would sneak little cameras and try to, I mean, when we weren't trying to be sort of nasty or facetious. We were really just trying to learn what he does so that we could go home and copy him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he saw my camera open, and so he said, "No, this is not on." But being the good guy he is, he sort of invited me to spar instead of telling me to put the camera away.
I really like that.
No, I mean, if we were counting points, it may have been 40 points to 2.
Yeah.
in that particular fight.
Yeah.
I remember landing a Chudan Mawashi, which he gave like a little nod to me on, which is sort of the height of my accomplishment. but other than him and Sensei Morgan, easily the most difficult opponent I ever had, this guy from Pakistan. And I mean, the first 3 points he scored on me, I can honestly say I did not even see him flinch. It's that kind of speed, it's that kind of delivery.
Yeah.
Just on another level.
Super fine-tuned.
Unbelievable. And what happens is the confidence starts to go down, but you just have all you have to have is a good coach in the corner for that to be resolved. So Sensei Ian looked at me and said, "Boy, you've come this far, you're going further." And you get that fire in your belly, and you go again, and you switch and you adapt. That particular fight, I mean, was just exchange after exchange after exchange. I caught up, and it was 4-3, 4-4, 5-4. It went up to 9-8, and he happened to win. But I say this to sort of tie back to my earlier point, but I have not fought better than that in my entire life, and I lost. And I came away feeling more happy and accomplished in myself, even though I lost, than any other fight I've ever won in my entire life.
Yeah.
Turns out after the fact that my arm was broken back from the semi-final, and since Ian's thinking was, well, if something is broken, it can't be more broken than broken, so carry on.
Science.
And I loved it, and I come away with a story, and And you relish those moments, but it was an
Yeah.
unbelievable fight, and no, I credit it with a lot that came thereafter.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's a fascinating story. That's a fascinating story. So you served a little amount of time before you took your hiatus in the senior national team. What was the culture like back then? How did you feel about the? I'm not going to say initiation because that refers to a specific, day, to a specific night, to a specific procedure. But I'm talking about the actual initiation of you becoming part of the national team in terms of events, how people accept you, etc.
Yeah. So I caught it in the transition. So there was a generation of athletes. I mean, our heroes when we were coming up, cadets and so forth. You think of the Sensei Jeffrey Jacksons, the Quentin Rooks, the Sensei Eugene Oosthuizens. I don't plan to. I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but you think about those level athletes. I mean, these were superstars. Sensei Llewellyn, of course. Let me not forget him. And just beneath them, you had what I thought was sort of the most explosive athlete I'd ever seen in Andre de Oliveira. And you look at these guys and you're thinking, goodness, is this now what I have to face? And so when I was 18, what happened is gradually that generation of athletes started to retire slowly but surely, and a very young crop took their place. So Sensei Morgan was sort of the sole almost representative who belonged to that previous era and was the up-and-comer in that previous era, who then became the dominant athlete in this new era that I sort of belonged to. And I obviously knew Sensei Morgan from ages, from the child days coming up to Johannesburg, training with him and his brother and Sensei Shay and the rest of it. But so it was a very warm introduction, just because these were people that I'd grown up with. So I can't say that I was part of the crop that sort of joined that initial crop of athletes, but I was sort of the next generation.
How old were you when you were first part of the national team?
So goodness, let me just try to get my memory right. But I think it's because when you were 16, you were actually able to compete kata for seniors.
Yes, that sounds right.
That I actually joined quite early because I could compete kata.
Okay.
Memory doesn't serve, but it was really young. It was definitely before 18. It was either 16 or 17.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So because of the kata. So I joined quite early. I remember that the first time I was officially part of the senior team was a Zone 6 trip. And I remember that we sort of stayed in a camp. And that was sort of where Shian Peter Brandon sort of took us through our paces and so forth before we traveled to the Zone 6 competition. So it was quite a crop of us.
Also a guy that just, does amazing things to your karate, man.
To your mind.
Yeah.
I mean,
just like,
unbelievable.
Oh, I'm here, It just feels like there's so much gravitas to whatever you're doing when you have one of those people around. It's just unreal.
He's the type of person that can take a moment and can hold your gaze and can hold your respect and can hold your focus. He can take a moment. He's at that level. But extraordinary experience to be tutored by any length of time by him. So so that was sort of the fault. So in short, I joined when there was this transition between the previous generation and the new generation. And since Deep was sort of my main competitor within the under 67 category.
Okay.
I mean, unbelievable fighter. And the kata realm was what it was, and James Chen was sort of the incumbent, so to speak. Again, just one generation after the previous. So I came in a phase transition era, so to speak. So it was quite easy to get involved because I'd gone to Worlds with these guys at the junior level and the cadet level. So it was really warm and welcoming. How was it for you?
Yeah, my experience was different. Just by virtue of the fact that I was not at all part of the generation that was there, you know.
So did you join the generation that would have been mine, I guess?
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty much, or maybe even a little bit older than yours.
Yeah.
So Megan Boyance, Ian Boyance, Morgan Moss, Shane was selected for that initial team. But these are pretty muchly the guys that I'm working with, and I'm pretty muchly the only one that's my sort of age.
Yeah.
But I think they welcome me well. And of course, because I succeeded very quickly when I entered, it changed things very much. So it was like, oh, he's just a kid. We don't know if he's going to be here for 5 minutes or for a long time. But then when I won, it was like, okay, he's not just anybody. You know, he's not just a member of the national team. He's probably here to stay, and he's probably going to be one of the pillars. I don't know, 5 years or 6 years later, how many years I've been in the national team? 6 years. If I am actually a pillar of the national team, because by personality, I'm a little bit of a rebel, and I like to do things a little bit differently. But this is exactly why I raised the question. Is because for me, I think conversations need to be had that are so important once you become part of the national team, and say, why are you here? What is your motivation for doing this? What is your mental state? You know, it's all of the things that we've spoken about so far. How do you react when you lose? How do you react when you win? How are you going to navigate this thing? Because once you become part of the national team, it's for me personally, when you're part of the national team with somebody, it's like a sacred bond. Even if I don't like you, I'm going to put that stuff aside, because you're going to struggle alongside me on this journey. If you take a loss, it's heavy. If you win, it's massive. It's all of these things that you have to take into consideration. And I remember clearly, in 2014, we had Ebola in Senegal, and we had to sign a waiver at the airport to say, if we happen to die in Senegal, then it's not the National Federation's fault, you know. And I remember, like, honestly, everybody was like, oh, making jokes and like, oh, this is quite scary and stuff. And I was like, if I win the gold medal and I die, it's okay.
Yeah, such
and
was your
I
focus
genuinely believed it,
Yeah.
And this for me is what it means to be part of the national team. And sometimes I look at some members and I'm like, no, this is not what you want.
Is it that they don't believe as hard as you do? Is it that they take it for granted? Is it?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's something like that. It's something like that. I just look at it and I say, I think that this is a sacred bond, once you're part of the national team. So it's like, I want to see you be as committed to the national team as I am. But the thing is, if somebody had to say, stop eating refined sugar for 6 months, or don't be in the national team anymore, a lot of people wouldn't be there. And it's like, I don't feel so cool being next to these people. You're not willing to quit refined sugar for 6 months, and I'm willing to die.
Yeah, it's a totally different scale.
Exactly.
But I guess these are the things that you sort of have to then say, well, what is it that I can do to control whether this guy is stuffing himself with chocolates at the end of at the end of every evening?
Very, very little.
So should you let that affect your state of mind, your performance?
No, you can't.
Yeah,
you can't.
So
you can't.
There must be a reliance on some outside body which regulates this and controls this, if this is what is indeed thought of as being valuable.
Should be.
Yeah.
So have you watched the series The Good Fight?
No.
Okay. So it's basically about lawyers and stuff, and in the initial part of the series speaks about the election of Trump as the president, and basically this woman loses her retirement plan, and she's worked very hard, and she's about 60 years old, and then she goes back to work, and her motivation to start is, I don't need to correct the world. I need to take my corner of the world and make it sane.
That's brilliant. So you know of Jack Ma, sort of founder of Alibaba?
Sure.
So I don't know if it's his book or if it's a movie about him, but the title is The Crocodile of the Yangtze. And the thinking is, you don't need to be the biggest crocodile.
Yeah.
in the Yangtze. You
Yeah.
need to be the biggest crocodile in your little tiny corner of the
Yes,
Yangtze, and
yes,
life
yes,
will be
yes.
enough.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly, man. And to be honest, that's a big thing that I'm trying to do with VPD. So for me, like, somebody can be a brilliant athlete, or somebody can be a brilliant coach, but I don't necessarily allow you to work with people because you don't subscribe to the same amount of same values that I do. So I know down the road we're going to have a problem somewhere, and we're not heading exactly in the same direction. So I'm saying in VPD, certain things are very important to me. Very important to me. So you say, what is your motivation if you lose? How do you deal with loss? How do you behave when you're around? Like, I was extreme. When I was 19 years old and I went to African Games, I remember Andre put his jacket on his wife's shoulders, his African Games jacket. It wasn't my place, but I was like quite agitated, you know?
Yeah, you believe so passionately in
I'm
the
very
badge.
extreme. I'm very extreme. Now it's like people can do as they wish, but at the time I was like, that's not right. She never. This is a very important jacket, you know.
Yeah, I think it is a journey of maturity, because I can see myself in you 100%. I
Yeah,
was also
sure.
extremely black and white.
Yes, yeah.
Either things are absolutely right or absolutely wrong. And for better or for worse, you know, if it's how you were born, if it's the experiences that built up to you being like that, for some reason you were like that.
Sure.
And time, as it does, tends
Yeah.
to melt that kind of extremism away.
Yes.
But I don't think you should judge yourself for being overly wrong or overly, be too harsh on yourself for how you were. It's how you felt.
I think it's a good side of the border to start with. I think so, because if you start too lax, to fill in the infrastructure as you go is a little bit more difficult than it is to ignore certain facts. I had a very good grade 7 teacher, old man named Mr. DeBase, and he said the trick to controlling your environment is to observe 100% of what's going on. Select to not react to 80%.
Yeah.
And react to the 20% that matters.
Yeah. And it's about making the distinguishing between what matters and doesn't. That really is the trick. But
Yeah.
we humans, we live our lives are filled with paradoxes. And my
Yes.
thinking is, you're allowed to be, and I still am very black and white about certain things in my life that I do.
Yeah.
But I'm totally grey about how other people's go about
Exactly.
about how other people go
I
about it.
couldn't agree more.
And that was the change. Was I used to sort of have my black and white beliefs, and I used to impose those beliefs on others, not necessarily telling them what I think, but certainly judging them, which was wrong.
Yeah.
Now I'm far more live and let live. I've got my code, I've got my set of principles, but
100%.
doesn't mean that your set of principles are the same or the next person's or the next person's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's about letting go, because you can't control that. That's sort of the underlying theme.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, I
But
understand.
I interrupted your story about the documentary. Is it Fight? Regardless.
No.
forward.
I'd finished that point.
Okay.
Point. About the series, The Good Fight.
Yes.
Yeah, I recommend it, by the way. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you probably don't have time to watch series in your life. I know you're a busy guy.
It's for me, it's like rest is as important as labor. So whatever way that you find to rest is good, and I certainly am not going to say no to a great series or a great documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
In the downtime.
Yeah.
What did I want to? I wanted to ask you, what is your hope and dream for VPD? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you have set as your objective? What do you plan?
There's many plans and many goals. So the initial vision that I had for this thing is to be able to create a resource that is holistic support for athletes. And it's and pieces of that picture have been filling in as I go along the way. But this is the initial vision, right? So when I started competing on international level, I said, wow, there's a lot of gaps. You know, I can't just get up and go on the plane and I go and I play and I win. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You need many, many things. If I'm an athlete, I need appropriate rest. Okay. I need to be able to dedicate majority of my focus to my job, which is competing, right? So that means I need to be training X amount of hours a day. I always look at the output. So this is a speech that I often have with people who are coming into the national team. How many hours are you training a week? Okay, does it match your objective? You know what I'm saying?
But firstly, what is your objective?
Yeah.
And
What
then
is
you
your
reverse
objective?
engineer.
Exactly. If you're training 9 hours a week and you're going to an African championship, you have a problem. Because I promise you that the people that you're going to be competing against are training more than 20 hours a week. 100%. It was very interesting when I went to Hong Kong for a training camp. Athletes they have to commit to 21 hours a week of training, and they have to get it stamped.
Yeah, it's contractually binding.
Exactly. Otherwise, you get thrown out of the national team. Finished. Done. And everybody does it because they get paid. Okay, we don't have a system like that in South Africa, but people aren't always going to give you handouts. That's not how it works. So you have to have the self-discipline to do that. So I need to say, is there a place in South Africa currently where if I want to control my diet, how do I do it? If I want to control my strength and conditioning program, how do I do it? If I want very high level technical support, how do I do it?
Yeah.
And as I go, I uncover more and more problems.
Yeah.
But this is the initial vision. You understand what I'm saying? So we want to try and create a sports center where everything is taken care of for this athlete. You go in and this is your home, dude.
But we're talking specifically a karate athlete.
Initially.
Yeah.
Probably when, you taught me a lot about effort versus cost, you know? So it will be very inexpensive intellectually and financially to cross over sports at that stage.
Yeah. I mean, it is a bit of a benefit of the times that we live in, that you've got the ability to leverage and you've got easily replicable product for different application at very little marginal cost of production.
Yeah, super little.
So if you've got a platform such as you have, where you've got top quality instructors educating consistently day in, day out, how hard is it to add another individual to be part of that program, another individual. The cost of replication is small, but the value add is still massive to each individual that comes on board. And of course, there's a point where there's too many individuals, and so the personal attention that you once got begins to wane, and that's not so nice. But I mean, that is a problem of success that can be solved with creating more and more supply. But
if you assign your people to the right tasks, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. If you give people appropriate workloads, no problem. Sure. That is why in the VPD system, it's required for coaches to create an eight week plan.
Yeah.
And they submit. Did the athletes perform as well or less or more than I thought? You know? Yeah.
And I mean, if you just sort of think about this year, I don't know if it was because of the COVID scenario that you sort of launched this thing, or if you were stewing about it before, or whatever the case might be.
I was definitely stewing about it before, but modality is a problem. Yeah. So COVID allowed me to say, okay, this is the modality we're going with.
And if I look at how the traditional sort of setups struggled in that environment versus how, I'm just speaking now as a pure customer, how fantastic it was for me to, work hard, knock off, it's now time for training neatly on my calendar. Here are the sessions that I'm going to attend.
Yeah.
Go to my, training place, couple, 2 by 3 square meters. It's small, but hey, it gets the job done. You switch the Zoom session on and off you go. You're training and sweating as if you were in a dojo.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable. And I think it's testament to there is adversity. There are bad set of scenarios. And I mean, let's not forget about the human tragedy that has happened, but it affects our day-to-day lives, and it's those who are willing to adapt and change and evolve rather than fight
100%, man,
what cannot be fought. I must credit to you. I mean, it's been fantastic absolutely fantastic to have been part of that journey.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, because this is a project that is very close to my heart, and I hope that my openness of mind has created the ability for other people to open their mind. So we see many people from the Free State now attending Gorju sessions. Before, this is unthinkable.
Yeah.
Unthinkable.
Yeah.
You know, strictly JKA people, now they attend Gorju sessions. Many people from Free State now know Seiyun kata, Siso kata, and with decent understanding.
Yeah.
Maybe execution is not there because they haven't done Gorju all their lives, but they can look at something and say, yeah, that's pretty much spot on, or not.
And life is better for it.
Yes, exactly.
No, you're not going to get an argument from me on that one. This type of thing didn't exist when I was sort of up and coming and so forth, but I could imagine how much of a benefit it would have been to me in my formation.
Yeah, this thing didn't exist until yesterday, Bruno. You know, and like you speak to me because, I mean, we're looking to expand in terms of timelines and stuff, but the thing is, there isn't really competition. Not exactly.
Yeah, so there's,
exactly.
I have two views on that. The first is, if you're going to sell fried chicken, for example,
yeah,
you want to be where other takeaway stores are, because that's where people go to get takeaway. So on the one hand, competition is not great because, well, there's an opportunity for somebody to come, but at the same time, competition might create a bigger market.
Yeah.
So I
tapping
don't really
into a
know
market, tapping into a marketplace that exists, is cool. If it's not saturated. But if you're a pioneer, I think it might be even more difficult than entering a marketplace that is saturated.
Yeah.
Once you make those breakthroughs that are necessary and you get the model right, then, you know, it's cool because you're the first one who's drawing from the well. But the problem is you have to do the digging. In marketplaces where they already exist, the digging's already done for you. You tap in, boom, it's out. And
you have to pay for the school fees because there's no model, there's no precedent to model yourself after that has gone through the hard yards, established the right model, and you sort of slot in. Absolutely. But if I go back to how it is that we would get high-level international education from...
And you guys were part of a dojo that was on the forefront of that. If I look at Free State during your generation, you guys were the guys who were pushing that envelope.
Yeah, and I credit Sensei Ian 100% for that, because he had the genius to say, well, we've now gone to Turkey, 5-6 of us.
Yes.
We've now expanded our abilities tremendously through this 1 week camp. We've come back and here are the results. They're plain to see. Easier to bring 1 or 2 or 3 people to South Africa to educate 200 than the other way around. Now you're
100%.
taking it a step further and saying, well, out of the comfort of your own home or dojo, you could get this spectacular education from, you know, the world's or some of the world's best coaches, athletes, with very little cost associated to anybody. So really, it's a scenario where everybody wins. And much like how businesses evolved over the past 100 years, there's disintermediation.
Yes.
So the airlines no longer get the cut because the guy's not flying in or you're not flying out. The hotels no longer get the cut.
Yeah.
Taxis, these things are taken away from the equation, and you get pure focused education directly into your bloodstream.
Yes.
Okay, it's not perfect. You're not getting the guy looking at you in live time, actually having a look at the position of your hips, etc. But for goodness sake, it's very close, and the fact that it's been built over a COVID scenario is amazing.
That's why, you know, our base is created from purists, I would like to think, karate purists. So I've always said that VPD is a supplementary source. So it does not replace that person looking at your hips. It does not replace going to the dojo twice a week. But there's problems with that modality, and I hope to fill the gaps that exist in that traditional modality.
Or at least take somebody to the next level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I mean, I'm the type of person, I'm always learning, I'm always trying to improve, I'm always trying to, I mean, the second you think you know something is the second you're in deep, deep trouble.
True.
There is always a bigger fish. There is always a tremendous amount to learn. I mean, in my particular circumstance, I co-head an investment management company here in Johannesburg. And it is especially in that kind of environment where if you think that you've got something figured out, that you're in for a very rude awakening. Better to remain humble, to remain open-minded, to walk through a set of predefined rules and principles that you've established in the cold light of day to fight the wars when they come.
Of course.
But involved in that process is continually improving your system.
Yeah.
Continually learning from outside sources. And I mean, in our space, it's very easy because people pride themselves on publishing their work, publishing their research. So you can, with a very critical eye and objectively assess other people's progress and see where that fits within your realm. But I think it's the same with karate.
100%.
If you are just learning from one single source all your life, there is a lot of opportunity left wanting.
Oh yeah, sure. Concept of hybrid vigor, man. So hybrid vigor. Do you know? Are you familiar?
I mean, I can piece the puzzle together, but please go through it.
Yeah. So it's basically a biological rule where the further the less similar two genetic codes are once they cross to create the offspring, the higher the quality of the offspring will be. So cross-pollination is so important, man. And that's why I look at certain people's mentalities and I understand that once you start exploring in other pools and stuff, there's a lot more room for error, and you have to be a lot more intelligent to weed out what is good for you and what is bad for you. But if you starve this fire of oxygen, it's gonna die. You know, you have to allow new content to come in. It doesn't mean that you have to reply it all the time, but you have to keep that mind being stimulated. You have to keep it running. You know, and people don't understand that the old masters that they follow so religiously were actually cross-pollinating at their time. Kanazawa Soke was training with Gogen Yamaguchi sensei of Goju Kai. You know, that's why Seiunshin is one of the syllabus for Kanazawa Soke. People don't know this. Actually, Yamaguchi sensei was teaching a lot of people who were elite. Kyokushinkai people all are originally supposed to be Goju, because Masayama, the guy who started out Goju Kai, was a card-carrying member of Goju Kai till he died. It all comes from a similar place, and people who have an inventive mind, and I'm sure you can take it across the spectrum of people who invented stuff. I just know the history of karate better than other things.
Yeah.
But people who invent generally, you know, spoke to each other. You know, Sigmund Freud was a good friend of Carl Jung, you know, etc.
No, without a doubt. I mean, I think it's Isaac Newton, or Sir Isaac Newton rather, who has that saying, you know, if I've gone anywhere, and this is not paraphrasing, it's because I've stood on the shoulder of giants.
Yes.
Which,
sure.
I mean, for a guy who before the age of 30 sort of invented calculus, and I know that another guy was also given credit for that, but can you imagine just sitting in your room and inventing a method to determine how it is that interplanetary objects move? And
yeah.
But I mean, this subject has been well known for generations, and to add that, I mean, you just have to study a little bit of biology to understand how things get better and improve.
Exactly.
Because if things don't get better and improve, the sad reality of life is that they die.
Yeah.
And so through iteration, you have improvement.
Yes.
And so using your biology analysis,
yeah.
You try one iteration, it is either good or it is bad. It is either fragile or it survives.
Yeah.
It then gets into another iteration. Okay, that one dies. Let's go back to square one.
Yeah.
We improve. But iteration, feedback, and the quicker you can close that loop between try, succeed or fail, get feedback, improve, try again, the closer you can get that feedback loop, the better, which is why it's been really great to have been part, I mean, from the customer's point of view, on your side, that the classes have been big, but not so big that you don't get a little bit of personal attention, where you're consistently training, but there's eyes on you. You know, that's not the right, you know, you're jippoing that move.
Yeah.
Improve this a little bit over here, and you get instant feedback like, okay, yes, that's great. And I think everybody should look for this kind of method of improving everywhere in their lives, not just karate.
Yeah, this is a very good challenge for everybody to do. But like you said, with poetry, right? Are you familiar with Robert Frost?
Yeah.
Good fences make good
Yes.
neighbors. My father did it this way. My grandfather did it this way. So I will do it this way. This is usually the rhetoric that survives. But for the future, for your karate future, what do you have in your plans, Bruno?
I sort of think about it as I want to have 3 hobbies in life. I want a hobby that makes me stronger, fitter rather. I want a hobby that makes me money, which is my job, and I really do see it as a hobby because it's the kind of thing that I'd be doing on a Saturday for free.
Okay.
I just happen
That's
to
awesome.
to do it Monday to Friday.
That's awesome.
And Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I'm fortunate to have found the perfect thing that I love, and that adds a lot of value to a lot of people, and making a business out of it, of course. And then the third is a hobby to keep me smart, which is, in my case, reading. I really love reading, voracious reader. So in my mind, sort of karate absolutely ticks as one of those pillars. It really is a 3-pillar framework, which is the one that keeps me fit. But aside from that, it does so much more, especially when I do kata. There is almost a spiritual component to it where you, the presence that is established is like something. I mean, I do practice meditation but there is nothing that makes me feel as present as feeling kata. Not necessarily.
Sure.
And I mean, there are moments where you try to improve technically, where when you're taking a class and you make a specific point about how movement should be done or how it should be initiated. And this is very much, prefrontal cortex stuff where you are making the links and you're trying to move it back into sort of. But for me, it is very much still a hobby. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to give it my all. It doesn't mean when I get on the floor. But it is something. I used to use karate as a vehicle of achievement. I'm now using karate as a vehicle of peace, almost. So it is very much one of the 3 pieces of my pillar. And
that makes so much sense.
And
to me,
it is less about. And I can honestly say this: I will enjoy training more than I will enjoy winning a competition. Because that is what I want from it. And the massive benefit of karate, of course, is that you can do it until you're very old. I mean, even at Honbu Dojo, there are karateka who are in their late 80s still doing it. And I mean, what a fabulous example. What other sport?
Yeah.
So it is very much to understand karate better, and as opposed to using it as a vehicle for achievement.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
And what about for you? I mean, you've been on this massive journey, trying your damnedest to get into the Olympic space, and we all know what's happened to the Olympics. So what now?
Yeah, exactly. I am not sure.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And you don't have to have an opinion on everything at every moment. You can figure that out.
I'm still trying to figure it out. There was a phase over the last 9 months where I was very, very seriously considering retirement. And once I retired, I was going to consider my next move, whether that was coaching or just focusing on VPD or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm not even close to that bridge yet. But then it was announced that UFAC is going to be in Cairo next year.
Okay.
So UFAC is a competition that is very close to my heart. I always feel at home in UFAC. It's like no other karate competition that exists out there. It's vibrant. It's loud. It's a little bit rude, Yeah. So and Cairo is basically my second home. Basically.
Yeah. That type of competition environment is just the right amount of chaos to mix with order.
Exactly.
To be really different from everything else.
Exactly. And like I was training in Egypt in my early tenure in the senior national team with Sensei Hesham. He was my coach. So Cairo is a very special city to me. When I land, when I walk through those doors in the airport at arrivals, it's just like, it's
not just the heat.
Yeah, no, not just the heat. It's an emotional experience, man. It's a crazy emotional experience for me. I try to go every year to Egypt. It's almost like a karate pilgrimage for me. Well, not even a karate pilgrimage, just the general one. It encompasses all facets. So for the UFAC Championship to be happening in Cairo, it feels like a sign to me. It's like I have to go, man. I have to go. I have to
If you're being pulled that way, then you go with the flow.
Yeah, and then from there, I don't know what's going to happen after that. But Sensei Hisham always used to say to me, because I had already started coaching at a very young age. I started coaching at 13 years old. And people say like, oh, it's not possible to start coaching at 13 years old, but it was genuine. I had 2 or 3 athletes that I focused very specifically on, and all of them had Protea colors. All of my students that I was working with in 2013 went to the Junior UFAC Championships and performed decently. So it's something that I've been doing for a very long time, and my Sensei Hisham said, you need to decide, are you a coach or are you an athlete? You can't have one foot in both bases, because then you'll end up doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
So I think I feel my weight as time goes shifting over to the coach's side.
Yeah.
I'm making that, I feel like I've begun my transition over. And now, like you said, in the beginning, your career was all about winning medals and succeeding, etc., etc. My aspirations are a lot more on how to deliver messages and how to gather as much content as I can about karate. This is very important to me. So before, it used to be a case of, okay, which one works best for me? Delete, 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 delete. I take this one. Now it's, I collate everything. I understand everything. I give. It's the focus is different now when I train.
Yeah, and the people who will come after you only benefit from that. So I think
hopefully
I think it is a natural transition, but it's also still a selfless one and one to be admired. So that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly, man. Look, this is exactly what I push for, and if things succeed and if I'm able to realize what's happening in my head, then we will see different results from the South African national team. I'm willing to put that on the table.
Well, that's
and I'm saying that the people from VPD are going to be performing at the levels that are important in WKF.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a tough goal to set for yourself. But if you're not going to set those tough goals and make things uncomfortable,
like you said, man, some things I'm grey on. Some things I'm black and white on. This is one of the things that I'm black and white on. That's what it is.
It's important to then put it up in the sky and know that that's where you're marching. This is important.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah. But Bruno, thank you very much. This has been awesome, man.
I've really enjoyed it. I mean, it's my first podcast, so I'm hoping I didn't do too poorly.
No, you did excellent, man. You did excellent. And I think the people that are listening are going to be wide-eyed at the content that is in here, because these are often things that are not spoken about.
Yeah.
And I think it will give somebody with fire in their heart, I don't know who it is out there who listens to this, some inspiration and some light at the end of the tunnel if they're feeling like they're repressed.
Yeah. May you find meaning in what you do, rather than just robotically try to accomplish. There's many more people who are far more accomplished than me who can give you the how-to guides on how to get that sparkly gold medal around your neck. But maybe if I was able to make you think about something a little bit beyond that, which is the meaning component, which I believe is where true fulfillment can come from.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you very much, Bruno.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Sure.